Welcome to the Nashville Money Guys podcast. My name is Brandon McDonald. Normally, there are two other gentlemen with me here, except now that I've kind of got my new space set up, it's probably going to be a lot more of just me and you one-on-one. I apologize because I'm like the least smart guy on our team and the least qualified to be doing what I'm doing. I just happen to have a microphone and a camera. The reason that I think that this video is going to be interesting is the timeline of the change of my perspective over the last couple of years. So here's what I want to talk about in this video. The reventure consulting guy and other housing bears. So there's kind of these, the colloquial term is crash bros on the YouTube space. So there's like a few different, I guess we would call them influencers that typically have been really bearish on the housing market. So basically, COVID hit, like crisis. Things are terrible. Everybody's locked in their homes. Nobody wants to move. Bearish. Prices go up 30% over the next couple of years. That's horrible. Bearish. I'm really bearish on the housing market. And so I begin to watch these guys, like the reventure consulting guy is the main guy. I'm not saying that he's not smart. I'm saying that when you look over a long enough timeline of somebody being negative on a housing market, you go, when do we get to decide, oh, he's been right all along? And I think that the answer is if you're trying to call trends, and you're trying to call highs and lows, then you probably have to put a timeline on it. And that's not what I'm going to do in this video, but what I'm going to comment on is the fact that the longer this market goes on this way, the more right the crash bros have the potential of being. That makes me nervous because doing what we do, which just if you don't know who we are, the company that I'm with the two other guys, which is why I will use the term we a lot, Nashville Money Guys, we're a hard money lending company out of Nashville, Tennessee. But over the last 15 years, we've been buying and holding, we've been buying and flipping, we've been doing new construction, we have an Airbnb portfolio, and we've done about 400 plus homes over the last 15 years. So we are super plugged in to what's going on specifically in Middle Tennessee, but nationwide in general. Like I'm interested in what's going on with the treasury market. I'm interested in what's going on with interest rates. So we follow all that stuff so that we can make informed investing decisions, which is one of the other reasons that I tend to watch people that are on YouTube that are putting out information, especially if it's statistics based. And that's one of the things that I like about the reventure guy in general. He's got this cool app that you can go into, and you can basically look at your little area, and it's going to tell you a bunch of information. Like I think it's useful. But what's interesting to me is just the overall tone for so long has been housing is unaffordable. Based on incomes for the area, housing has to crash, or at least housing has to come down because people can't afford it. And it's simply not been happening. The cracks that have slowly been appearing in the foundation wall over the last, I would argue slightly pre-COVID, there appear now to just be so many cracks that you're like, how the heck is this wall still standing? And prices are still going up in certain markets. And it's not just like specific certain markets. It's a lot of markets across the United States. It makes no sense when you actually take all the economic factors and put them in front of you, except we cannot predict or understand what is going to go on between the Fed and the Treasury market. We don't know what Janet Yellen's going to do. We don't know what the administration is necessarily going to do, and we don't know what Jerome Powell is going to do. And their influence is so strong. The hand of influence that those people have is so heavy. It can literally send markets through the roof, or it can crash them. It is absolutely bizarre. I don't know what I would title this video, but it's going to be something like, he's been wrong so far, but that maybe is changing. I think that's probably a totally catchy title. That's not what I'm going to call it. But the essence is going to be The longer this goes on, the longer interest rates stay high, the more pressure is being put on the market, the closer he gets to being correct. Because right now, housing affordability is at an absolute all-time low. Housing prices are still super high. And now housing payments are still super high. One of the other arguments that I've been hearing from people is that they don't think that the monthly payments are that important of a factor. And I've heard that on a number of different episodes, including some people talking about cars. And they just talk about the total price of the car, the total price of the house, and how that relates to people's income. But I honestly think that it's the opposite that's true. I think that what actually matters is what people perceive they are willing to give up month after month after month in perpetuity in order to get a car or a house. I don't think it has anything to do with what the total price is. Because if we were doing it based on total price, you would want to appeal to people in that method. So you would say, here's what the total price of the house is over 30 years. Or here's what the total price is going to be paid, including interest and everything. So the car that you're buying for $50,000, because interest rates are now, 9.5% for a used car loan, you're not actually going to be paying $50,000. Over 5 years, you're going to be paying $70,000. And if that was an appealing way to do things, we would go, oh, that's amazing. With the lower interest rates, I pay $65,000, but with the higher interest rates, I pay $70,000. If you're confused, or if you're like, what is he even talking about? I feel the same way, because nobody looks at stuff that way. We all do the same thing. I've got an extra $600 that I can spend this month, or that I can spend on a car payment. So then we back into it. What's the total that we can pay for the car as long as I've got $600 a month? So that's another thing that I feel like the Reventure guy has been chasing the correct statistics, but the timeline has been wrong, because the alarm bell is going off of housing affordability being at an absolute all-time low, super high housing prices, super high interest rates, super low affordability. But all that can change as soon as Jerome Powell snaps his fingers. And so one of the reasons that what we've been doing on my team for the last 18 months, we've pulled way back. We have the least amount of houses going now than we've had going in the last 13 years, probably. It's a huge pullback, because we're just not seeing the opportunities that make sense. And we're just kind of doing this thing where we're just holding our breath. And I know that that's not a very appealing answer for a lot of people, but why would you take extreme action when there is no clarity of direction? And that's where we are right now. To me, there is no clarity of what Jerome Powell is going to do, because as much as they have tightened the screws, and we've seen some banks go out of business, and we're seeing massive issues in China, and there's crazy issues going on worldwide, and you look at the reverse repo market and what's been happening over there, you look at there are so many behind the scenes things that we as just normal people don't ever look up. The Eurodollar market, there's just some bizarre things that when you actually start diving into the way the monetary system works globally and the influence that has overall, you kind of realize how small potatoes we are, as far as the economic influence. I think when they're making policy changes in the United States, they're looking at us, sorta. But what they're more looking at is the global market, especially now that everything is digital. The speed of money moves so much faster. The speed of information moves so much faster. The influence that something like the issues going on in China or Japan dropping interest rates, raising interest rates, dropping. Japan is doing something with their interest rates now that people were talking about it having an effect on the United States. So even me, who pays attention to this stuff, there's so many factors that you're trying to weigh together that you're like, I can't do this. I can't even keep up with all this crap. How am I supposed to make an educated decision? That's why for us, when we see this trend of weird neutrality that's going on right now, we've just been like, okay, we're going to just hold up. We're just going to kind of stagnate. We're going to pull back, do some deals that we think are really ultra safe because we're still selling some houses. When we list stuff that's in the bottom like quarter of pricing in the Nashville area, it's still moving. It's not moving as fast as it was before, where we would get a bunch of offers, multiple offers. Maybe it's on the market for a few weeks. But even coming into the selling season, we've sold stuff through the winter that we thought we would have more trouble selling. But we've got a few houses that are like higher priced, even houses where we're kind of pushing the comps in the area, that we're getting some showings, but they're not moving. Now, we had a lot of room on those, and that's one of the reasons we want to see what's going to happen in the selling season. And if Jerome Powell, which what he's talking about is interest rates, they're talking about 3 cuts this year. Now, we don't know how big of cuts they are. Is it quarter point cuts? Probably. I mean, it could be 1/8. They could come down so little that on the actual 30-year mortgage market, which is basically Fed cuts rates tied to the 10-year treasury, tied to 30-year loans. In essence, we could potentially see a shift that's coming down. Maybe not a ton. Maybe it is enough that banks finally go, we've been holding our breath too, and we're tired of this. So now let's rock and roll and let's go make some money. Let's do some loans. I don't know. Some of the other things that are coming out as well nationally that are really interesting to listen to the Biden administration and like RFK Jr. with these proposals for helping first-time homeowners, or helping people basically with tax credits and that kind of stuff. I always wonder how effective those programs are for actually stimulating. Because the truth is, the thing that is the most stimulating to the real estate market would be interest rate cuts. If you could get the 30-year mortgage rate back at like 5 or lower, I think it would just be a bonanza. Because all the people that have been waiting, that have been doing the same thing we've been doing, which is just kind of holding your breath, will absolutely flood back into the market. But the Fed is worried about these massive global things out here. Like they talk about inflation stateside a lot, but they're managing a bunch of other things that they don't talk about. And if they determine that it is better, net, even if we get screwed, we the American people, like the consumers, if we get screwed in the short run, they're going to say this is better for the dollar and better for the country in the long run for us to continue to hold the rates high. So we're only going to come down 1/8 of a point, and then we're going to just see what happens because they're worried about inflation going up, or they're worried about, like I said, a bunch of factors that unless you really dive into monetary policy across the world and you understand a bunch of these back channel markets, we don't really know. We don't really know. So to bring it all back to what I was talking about with the Reventure Consulting guy and the Crash Bros, if this goes on long enough, they will be right. If Jerome Powell holds interest rates high long enough and incomes don't rise, housing prices will come down. They just don't have a choice. The basic laws of supply and demand and the amount of money that people can spend. I know that there's a ton of realtors that are still saying date the rate, marry the house, date the rate. When it comes down, then you can do the refi. But I'm sure there's a decent amount of people who did that maybe a year ago, that it was like, we can do this for a while. But what's a while? Maybe there's people that are fine to continue to do it for 5 more years. But the reality is there is a timeline. There is a timeline with which you can't hold your breath anymore. Even for us, like there is a timeline with which we will be forced to go back into the market and start hunting again, start trying to hammer deals, start trying to find stuff, because we don't want to just sell existing inventory at what we view as at a big discount, even though is it actually a discount if the new price discovery is showing us that, no, in order to move a house, we have to do a 30% price drop. Like we know that this was the price before when interest rates were at 3.5, 4, 4.5. But now with interest rates where they are and the fact that it seems like they're going to sustain, we must do a 30% price reduction in order to move this inventory. That's not a good feeling. I hope that we don't have to do that. I hope, because I think there's millions and millions and millions of people that have bought in the last few years, that it would really undermine what happened. It would undermine their purchases. But I can also understand from the Fed's perspective, them going, yeah, but we held interest rates too low for too long and we allowed prices to explode. And then we did a bunch of COVID stimulus checks. We did a bunch of PPP and idle loans. We basically gave a bunch of money to people who know what to do with it. And they went out and they got fixed rate debt in the 2s and 3s and just skyrocketed the real estate market. Nobody at the beginning of COVID was like, oh my gosh, the real estate market is about to explode. Did you hear anybody that was saying that? If you did, please comment below and tell me who they were. I would absolutely love to have listened to the prophecy of somebody right at the beginning of COVID saying the way the government is going to react to this is by spending a crap ton of money, which is going to just pump assets. I think that's a reasonable thing to have seen. But I think there was so many more people that were like, oh my gosh, this is going to be horrible. We're all going to lock ourselves in homes. Nobody's going to want to sell their house because nobody wants germs coming in, and nobody's going to be trying to buy because nobody's going to want to risk going out. So the influence of politics and the influence of the Fed and the Treasury market and the international global monetary system has a bigger influence on housing prices than any of us can control. So when we talk about people that are making predictions, we have to understand that there can be shifts that happen behind the scenes that they have no idea are even happening. Or if they are happening and they can see them, we don't understand the ripples and the waves and the effects of how that is going to influence United States housing. So how do we proceed in the unknown? Carefully, quickly, in and out deals, really fast. Like if you've watched any of the podcast episodes that we have before, which by the way, if you're still here, please subscribe. We have just a tiny amount of people, which I love you all and thank you for watching. But we want to grow the channel. We want to grow what we're trying to do with Nashville Money Guys, which is kind of do some education stuff, go do some speaking engagements, get on some podcasts, talk to people. I feel like we kind of stuck our heads in the sand for the last 15 years. We didn't want to build a brand at all. And because I think that we were afraid of like neighborhood groups, just being able to be like, wait, you're building houses in my neighborhood. We hate you. And now we know who you are. And since we're not really doing that as much anymore, I think we're willing to kind of come out of our shell and share some of the stories and some of the experiences that we've had over the last 15 years. So it's like I said, if you're here, thank you for watching so far. How to proceed in this current market with speed. Understanding that the comps right now and what they're selling for may be slightly less in 3 months, in 4 months, in 5 months. So getting in and out as quickly as possible. If you're doing rehabs, paint and carpet rehabs. If you're trying to do some sort of rehab to refinance into a permanent mortgage, can you make those numbers work? And is it better to try to potentially partner with somebody who you say, I'm going to use your money for right now and give you all the cash flow until I'm able to refinance you out. And then I'm going to own 100% of the deal. So some of the stuff that I could be talking about right now, the creative financing stuff, is so important to learn right now when things are kind of weird, that you've perfected some of these methods as the market creates clarity on the back end, as we start seeing the trend of housing prices going back up or housing prices going down. And if you can spend your time watching videos by like Pace Morby and Brandon Turner and the Bigger Pockets, where you're listening to people that are having some folks on that are talking about creative finance, it just creates this knowledge base for you to say, okay, I understand more about deal structuring, and it's not simply here's cash I have, or I've got a bank loan, And if I can't figure out a deal within those two spectrums, that's it. I can't do the deal. The more you understand the different ways to buy and sell real estate, or to buy and hold real estate, or to option real estate, the more tools you have in your toolkit and the more opportunities that you'll have. Instead of doing 5 deals a year, maybe you'll do 7 because you were able to save a couple of those extra deals because you were able to listen to somebody and hear what they actually needed and to craft a deal around that. The reventure guy and the crash bros have been wrong so far, but the longer this goes on, the more of a potential they have to be right. Let's hope this doesn't go on much longer. Thanks for watching. This has been the Nashville Money Guys podcast. I'm Brandon McDonald.